The Copper Civilization and the civilization of hunters on land and sea appeared in North America, especially around the Great Lakes in Canada and the United States of America. They used to make their instruments from copper by striking it hot or cold. But they did not know how to melt it or how to pour it into molds, as was the practice in the ancient world since the year 1500 BC. In the Arctic region, Native Americans hunted fish and animals. When the Europeans colonized them, in the 15th century AD, they faced great challenges, and although some coexisted and traded with the colonizer and absorbed his techniques, the European colonizers seized their lands and worked to exterminate them in Canada and America. These tribes were called the Onondaga tribes, the Mohawk tribes, and Cherokee. They were also all known as American Indians or Native Americans. In Canada, they were usually called the Aboriginal people, and when Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492 AD, their number was estimated at between 40 and 90 million. When the Spaniards came, they found 50 Indian tribes in the west, including the Pueblo people, the Comanche, the Piman, and they had their own diverse languages. The Europeans brought with them diseases as a means of biological warfare, such as smallpox, measles, plague, cholera, typhoid fever, diphtheria, whooping cough, malaria, and other epidemics that were killing the indigenous population. The British authorities were deliberately distributing disease-carrying quilts to them, with the aim of spreading diseases among them. Their migration to the Americas. Details of the migration of ancient Native Americans to and within the Americas, including precise dates and routes, are still being researched and debated. The New World migrations model assumes that the migration of Native Americans to it from Eurasia via the Beringia land bridge, which connected northwestern North America, present-day Alaska, with northeastern Asia, Siberia, across what is now known as the Bering Strait, began approximately 16,500 to 40,000 years ago, at a time when sea levels were falling during the Ice Age, and this displacement continued for an unknown period. Theories also assume that the indigenous people were displaced either on foot or using primitive boats along the southwestern coast of the Pacific Ocean to South America. The ancient Americans spread and settled in the Americas to establish hundreds of nations and tribes with different cultures, thousands of years before the Europeans began colonizing the New World in the 15th century AD. However, the oral traditions of the Native Americans say that they have settled the Americas since the beginning of creation, and they support their stories with many traditional tales of the beginning of creation. However, determining the date of migration in the period from 40,000 to 16,500 years ago was and will continue to be subject to great scientific disagreement, and the only thing agreed upon so far is that the origins of the ancient Americans go back to Central Asia, and that the widespread spread in the Americas took place at the end of the last ice age, that is, 16,000 to 13,000 years ago. One of the more recent theories, which has gained great popularity in this regard, is what is known as the Saltarian theory, which assumes that an ancient European people, or more, were among the first inhabitants of the Americas, and that these ancient Europeans migrated to North America using methods similar to those used by the contemporary Inuit, following an ice sheet that was extending across the Atlantic Ocean. The hypothesis is based on similarities found between the methods of the Solitarian civilization in Europe and the Clovician civilization in the Americas, and there are no similarities to it in East Asia, Siberia, or Beringia, which are regions from which the ancient Americans are supposed to have come. However, this theory also finds many opponents based on the fact that the differences found between the tools found are greater than the similarities between them, and the temporal distance, 5,000 years, and spatial distance, thousands of miles across the Atlantic, that separates the two civilizations, in addition to genetic studies based on DNA techniques, which has belittled this theory.